Real quick, before we get started, if any of you want to say hi to my cat, here's my cat. Yeah. Yeah, we hang out a lot. But anyway. This is going to be a reaction, response video type of a thing to the Thought Spots channel. If any of you guys know the Thought Spot, she did a recent video. It might have been a week or so now, but it was a video on dispelling autistic stereotypes. And I wanted to write down a list, but I don't like writing. So I was like, I'll type it on my phone, but I'm recording on my phone. So I can't really, I can't look at a list while I record. So I just kind of have to memorize whatever I wanted to talk about. I tried recording this the other night, but it ended up being like 50 minutes long. And I really want this video to be more concise than that. And I wanted to address a few things from the Thought Spots channel. If any of you don't know, the Thought Spot is a channel created by Irene. She's super cool. I'll try to make this video as concise as I can. So real quick, I'm just going to try listing the various things I wanted to respond to. One of the things, now I'm blanking, but one of the things I wanted to respond to is, first of all, I resonated very strongly with that video. I tend to resonate pretty strongly with a lot of the Thought Spots content. Obviously, like, everyone has different experiences, so it's not like a 100%, like, I totally relate to every single thing. But, like, for the most part, I relate to a lot of her content. The Dispelling Stereotypes one especially. One of the things I want to address in the video is critiquing some, I'm going to call them negative comments. Now, there are people who have pretty good intentions where they're not trying to put a negative comment out there, or a harmful comment out there. They're just trying to, like, give more perspective or something like along those lines, which is fine, you know, for the most part. It's just certain things where it's like, so I want to critique on those. That's kind of one of my reasons that I really wanted to make this video as well. A second thing, what is a second thing? One of the stereotypes I remember right now that she listed is how there's a stereotype that autistic people cannot have high emotional intelligence, or do not have high emotional intelligence or empathy. Even though in reality, I would argue that autistic people are, like, kind of the most empathetic beings, and emotionally aware beings, because a lot of it comes from, like, being very hyper attuned pretty much by force and automatically to your senses and feelings, senses, sensations, you know, emotions, feelings, sense. Like, I feel like this should click with people that they're the same thing, right? But it like, kind of doesn't for some reason. You know, people say you have feelings and you're so sensitive, but then they don't connect that with the literal sense nerves. Like, physical touch is basically the same as an emotion at that point, because it's literally feeling, you know what I mean? But anyway, so I really agreed strongly with that point, and I agreed with all of the points. There were a few comments that critiqued a few things. One critique was about the stereotypes. People saying that, hey, the stereotypes are there for a reason. Like, yeah, obviously they can get out of hand, but you have to admit there's truth to them. That's how they became stereotypes. Like, first of all, that's not how stereotypes are made. And, like, second of all, like, there's not that much truth to them as well. Like, see, like, some stereotypes can be rooted in some sort of, you know, we can put quotation marks, evidence, but the evidence is quite intentional. A stereotype is mostly created out of bias, usually some form of prejudice or discrimination. For those of you who disagree with me, I don't know what to tell you. That's like quite literally where stereotypes tend to come from. They come from an outside point of view. And if you ever look at a stereotype that's come from an inside point of view, in other words, someone essentially trying to like create a stereotype about themselves, does that sound healthy? Like, I don't know, like, so I don't want to get too into depth about that because that will bring in a lot of other issues and topics beyond just talking about autism, like race, obviously, sexual orientation, gender identity. Like, there's just actually so many topics in which we can see that stereotypes are false, harmful, and pretty much intentionally harming communities or viewing people quite negatively. So I would say that no, the stereotypes created about autistic people are not helpful. When I was growing up, did they help me navigate and believe and understand that I am in fact autistic? I guess, yeah. But did it make me feel good about myself? No. Did it make me hate myself more? Yes. Did it make me think anything special or good about me is now bad or the R word? Yeah, it did that a lot, you know? So I would argue that that's not true. Yeah. Yeah. So that's my critique there on that comment. But I want to do a little bit of back and forth on critiquing some comments that I kind of disagreed with. And the reason why I feel like I want to do this is, for one of the reasons I wanted to make this channel is because, and Irene said this as well, she brought up like, there are just simply not enough autistic voices out there talking about autism and just like putting content out there on the internet. And I agree. Obviously, there was like a huge boom in content creators everywhere because capitalism and, you know, but overall, it's still like, yeah, there are still like, I feel, not enough autistic people out there openly putting out content. Another reason is for that said community. I want to connect with more autistic people because I find that you just gotta like have a fast forward button. You know, like when you like meet people and you want to make more friends or connections, and there's like a long hopeful phase that the people you meet will be cool, have aligned values, or if they don't have aligned values, that you can like talk about it. Now there's people who would be like, everyone's has a right to have different values. Why can't we all be friends and still have different values? For example, you know, you might feel racism is wrong. I might hate you for your race, but still be willing to be friends with you. What's the issue? You know, it's like you can, you can skip forward a lot of that. I tend to, when I meet autistic people, it just feels like a lot of that is already just stripped away, and we already kind of have a pretty decent alignment of values. Of course, I still do, like, that was an example of how I feel like, no, you really shouldn't have to tolerate people's difference of values and opinions. But on the other hand, like, it's totally fine as well to have overall differences of views and opinions, just because I don't know, I very much appreciate that people have their own journey in their life. I understand people are going to have different points of views. Some might be points of views that were conditioned and might not necessarily be unharmful. They might actually be harmful through my point of view, and then vice versa. I definitely have stuff instilled into me where it's not the best. And also, there's just different point of views that are just like really helpful to know, or help me see things from a different light, and I might change my mind. So I don't know. I'm just pretty flexible on the concept of having a view, having a value, and holding opinions. I think it's important to share different opinions, even if it's the opinion that no one else agrees with or has, and so forth. And then, yeah, just keep in mind that when I say all this, there's definitely a number of stuff where I'm just like, I have that stuff figured out by now where I've played around with seeing all sides of it and came to the conclusion that there is actually an answer to some things. Um, and it's those values in particular that tend to be quite aligned when I talk to autistic people and interact and connect with autistic people. So that's just something, that's like a pattern I have found in my life. Um, and for the sake of upcoming critique on a comment that I saw on the ThoughtSpots channel, I want to mention who these autistic voices, I'll say, are, which is like obviously people I've seen on the internet where I'm like, yeah, you seem cool. And again, like I'll see like we have certain difference of opinion and views, but nothing that's like drastic enough to make me feel like um unsafe or something, it's all just like, yeah, literally different person, um focused on different things in their life and a totally different upbringing, um or just an upbringing unique to their own that like I understand there's no way I can know what the entirety of their life has been, you know So there's those autistic people, which I'll say like are a lot of verbal autistic creators. Then there are loved ones in my personal life that were/are nonverbal and whatnot. Um, Mostly were, and then like a lot of getting back to are. And I might brush up on that a little bit later, especially when I talk about the critique. But yeah. What else did I want to talk about with the ThoughtSpots video? It was just a really good video. I guess I want to brush back up on the empathy thing and how I basically related to it, which is like part of what she brought up was like, for one, a lot of the times like people get the wrong idea of autistic people trying to be empathetic or try to help you or be there for you, which is like apparently some people don't like it that you try and give them solutions or tell them some knowledge that might help them feel better or might be something helpful for them to do. I believe Irene brought up that like some people will take it as like you're trying to prove that you like know more than them about a subject, and I just think that's silly. Not that Irene said that, but that people can spin your empathy that way, do a little reverse Uno card on you. I don't know. Something I wanted to add on how I also relate to that, because definitely there's a lot of me being there for people and trying to do that. For me, it tends to go pretty successfully because I'm very expressive, highly emotional. I like react to each and everything. Like I'll like flinch if they tell me something that sounds horrible or painful. Like there's a lot of that. Another aspect of what she was trying to describe with the empathy was that when autistic people are empathizing, how the stereotype could also have come to be is that I'm going to just say with quotation marks, regular people, neurotypical people, don't register it as empathy because it's not how a normal person would express empathy or show empathy. And I have a long tangent about that, but I have something to say about that in a second. But I just want to express like how I can relate to that, where I think, yeah, I can see how on the surface I might not look like I'm empathetic or being like considerate or kind-hearted or anything like that. And I'll give some obvious examples that like I feel like people could relate to in general. So for one, a while back now, it was my boyfriend's birthday, and whenever as it was building up to the birthday, people were asking, "Do you guys have any plans?" And I'd be like, "No, not really. But I hope he has a good birthday. Anyway, what else is on?" And my boyfriend would try and be like okay with it, but I could see a little bit of him feeling a little sad that we don't have anything planned for his birthday. And internally, I'm like, oh. But externally, I'm like, I don't see anything. I don't even witness that you might be feeling a little sad right now, which sounds horrible. I understand. But fast forward to his birthday, and like there's all this stuff, right? Okay, so I'll just give you an example. When he would go to work, I would immediately drive back home because I drive him to work, and I would get on the piano and I'd start practicing. Build up to his birthday. And I need to give some context. So there's a song called You're So Pretty. And when it was his birthday, officially, and I was like, happy birthday. We went to the kitchen because I was like, I really want tea. Could you please make me some tea on your birthday? Internally, I'm like, oh, which all, once again, what is going on? But he's like, so sweet. So he's like, sure, yeah, okay. So we get up. I think you all see where this is going. But we go to the kitchen. I get him over to the tea kettle. And while he's not looking, I grab the paper that I had put in the kitchen earlier in advance, like half a day earlier. And it's just a piece of paper. And I like sneak back to our bedroom and I place it on the bed. And I go back, and while the kettle is starting to turn on, I tell him, want your first birthday gift? And he's like, what? I'm like, yeah, it's in the bedroom. He's like, are you serious? I'm like, yeah. And so he goes over there, right? And he opens the paper, and the paper just has a sentence that just says, you're so pretty. And then immediately he starts hearing piano in the living room because we have a piano in the living room. And he's like, what? And so he, comes back on over. And yeah, I break out into the song, I play it, I sing it, and it's great. And then the rest of the birthday is just like a lot of stuff like that, So that's just like an obvious example of like how I express empathy, but it may not look like it on the surface. So a lot of it is like, I have a plan. A different way in which that's the same case is maybe a friend will tell me about something they're going through or whatever. And yeah, I'll probably empathize in that moment pretty openly and just like, but you know that feeling where you just wish you had the power to like help them. And then months will go by and then suddenly they might receive something in the mail. And it's about that exact thing they wish that they had for support or whatever. And that's another example. So like, yeah, I might hear people out and not have anything to offer or give in that moment because I don't. I'll be trying to plan for it to help them out. And so that's something else. And now the reason why I said like kind of obvious is because I do feel like I'm going to put quotes again, like normal people can kind of relate to that if they like have like a plan or a surprise. But like the thing is like I literally do this quite a lot, and it's also not always for the best. There's times where it's more just suppressed. There's no like secret surprise gift. It's just more like I'm like really upset, but then I like can't get out of it. It's basically like a shutdown, which mine can lead to a meltdown. Not necessarily really easily, but the moment a shutdown can happen really easily. And then it's extremely difficult to get me out of that and extremely difficult to avoid it eventually building up to a meltdown, which could build up over the course of the same day or over numerous days. And it's just not good. I've lost a lot of important valuables of my own stuff. It's usually just my own stuff. So that's not good. But anyway, during those times especially, my empathy is not really coming out the way that I would like it to. And so my critique on why I think this is just a harmful stereotype is this. I find it very interesting that the status quo society, the neurotypical society, and so forth, systems in place, think that we are not expressive emotionally or intelligent emotionally or empathetic or socially aware because we do not express how we feel on the inside always properly on the outside. That is something that I've heard for sure. Where they're like, whatever you're feeling emotionally inside, it doesn't come out. Like, you're emotionless. Your face is stone cold. Like, blah, blah, blah. They'll say stuff like that, like flat face, like monotonous tone. And yet, they don't hold that same standard onto themselves. That is something that I wanted to point out that I feel like the Thought Spot did not mention on the channel. That I think she would really appreciate. I feel like she might be like, that is actually so true. Easy example, people who work in customer service. Shout out to all the customer service workers. Like, wow. Everyone there overworked, underpaid, easy. But that's a different subject. But like customer service people and just like literally all people, like oftentimes the majority of their communication is that they express outwardly different than what they're feeling inwardly, and they do it all the time. Actually, I do know that the Thought Spot has talked about this in other contexts for sure. I just think not in this specific video of hers of Dispelling Stereotypes. And it's just like, that's really frustrating that they don't hold that same standard onto themselves, but they push that standard as a basis to purposely, basically, in my opinion, misunderstanding autistic people and being able to stereotype them and point out something. Again, that's how stereotypes are created. They use anything as proof to claim something that's essentially going to be harmful for you, either in the short run, like right now in this moment, or in the long run, just like over a long period of time. And it was definitely harmful for both, like most certainly. In fact, there's just like better, even if we're gonna, for the person who said that there's truth to it, you have to understand there are significantly better, far more accurate ways to describe whatever energies that they are trying to. They describe it so poorly that I will just say they're just not true. They're just inaccurate. And so that is basically what I wanted to say about the Thought Spots video. I really loved that video and pretty much all of her videos. I really like the energy that Irene puts out there on platforms. And yeah, if any of you found somehow this brand new channel and don't know of the Thought Sauce channel, I'll put a link in my description below. You should go check her out. Obviously, there are a lot of other autistic people out there that you can try and connect with, but there's some that I really dislike. I don't hate them or anything, but I like tried certain channels, mostly men, and I'm just like, okay, yeah, no, I just can't do this one. When I hear certain things, I'm just like, no, I'm going. But yeah, I really, really like the Thought Spots channel. I feel like maybe some of you out there will relate to some of it and might not relate to all of it, but that's literally like everywhere, right? So, yeah. And then I think the last critique I wanted to talk about is one of the other comments, some other comments, which I saw in the pinned comment that Irene had to start deleting certain comments that she was just like, these are just harmful comments to me. She left one, which was someone responding to that, just basically putting that same comment out there and then asking like, please don't delete this. I'm just trying to put another point of view. But it's like, I mean, that's kind of what a lot of the other comments were already trying to do. And she's just kind of already putting it out there that she already thinks those comments are just harmful regardless. But for the sake of like respecting like the overall wishes, I feel like the Thought Spot was like, okay, sure. Because they also put it in a way where they're genuinely trying to offer a different point of view. I basically left them like a super long reply. It's never on purpose that it becomes super long, but I left them a reply as kindly and respectfully as possible, strongly disagreeing, and my reasons for why. So the person's critique was that they find it harmful that the low needs, high masking get most of the spotlight on social media for the autistic community, which, like, first of all, autistic community in general barely gets a spotlight, and then a positive one anyway. And then second of all, like, that's not Irene's fault. Like, that's not the ThoughtSpot channel's fault for that. And also, that has nothing to actually do with, like, the fact that it's wrong for people to discredit or put down people who are considered low needs, high masking autistics. The truth is, we are, like, more expressive and intelligible, quote unquote, that people who are used to seeing. Like, people are used to thinking about, like, what a real problem for autistic people is, which are the nonverbals. They can't communicate, and they are going to need a caregiver for the rest of their life, and all these harmful things, which I feel like some of you don't understand that was also a lot of us current adults, low needs, high masking individuals. I think some of you don't seem to get it, that many of us were already like said person that you're describing when we were younger, and were babied around and treated like we were never going to become intelligible or be able to care for ourselves or anything. Literally talked down to in so many ways. But anyway, that's something that critiqued comment is not really seeing. They might not be seeing that point of view. They might not be understanding that. Another thing is, like, I don't think the thing is, in the video itself, Irene was saying that, like, people who are quote unquote low needs, high masking individuals, that it's not true, that their needs just are not talked about, and that they actually have pretty much the same needs. They have a lot of not everyone has unique needs for themselves, but basically, like, no one is low needs. We all have a lot of needs. We all need a lot of support. People in general, the human race, all communities and species everywhere basically need community in order to survive. You cannot do this alone. In truth, you cannot do this alone. Any of you thinking you can do this alone, even if you could, we are in a world where you're not even allowed to. For example, like, it's just like that. For example, you're like, well, I get my own clothes. Well, do you make your own clothes? Probably not. You probably buy your clothes. You get those clothes from people who made them basically for you. No, I make my own clothes. I bought my own. What did you buy? Your fabric maker. You bought the sewing kit. Even if you're like, I created my fabric, I found it out in the nature, and everything. It's like, okay, well, where did you gain that knowledge? Because you probably had to learn it from a book. You're like, I somehow invented it in my mind. It's like, all right, well, you have human words right now. You're a grown adult. At a time when you were born, you had to have listened and learned from the outside. Like, it's literally impossible to do anything alone. So we all quite literally have needs, right? And so, yeah, I don't know. I just thought, like, people get really defensive about autistic people who do have a voice, or, like, not that like, I don't know if that came out right, but, like, it's weird to me that when there are autistic people who can get a spotlight, that we get this kind of a reaction still from people, like we're somehow now a part of the problem. Because I'll just try quoting a little bit or paraphrasing a little bit of that critiqued comment. They were basically saying, like, how I feel is that the low needs, high masking autistics end up dominating the conversation on the online community, whereas, like, the high needs, low masking or no masking autistics who are, like, nonverbal and need serious care and stuff, they don't get a voice. It's like, first of all, like, shouldn't it then make sense that we do have a voice? Like, it should click that we are speaking up for all autistic people. I don't know any I'll put quotes, low needs, high masking autistics that are only wanting to advocate for low needs, high masking, and that they specifically are against anyone who's like quote unquote high needs, low masking. No, every content creator that I vibe with, including Irene, and we're on Irene's channel about this reaction video, so it's like, in regards to this specific content creator that they left their comment on, like, this person very strongly is advocating for all autistic people. And I think where I kind of come into this, where I'm like, I want to put a channel out there, is that for one, I kind of was that autistic kid. It's really complicated when we look into my childhood, but the interesting thing is that I have siblings. And so what do you do when you have two siblings, both autistic, both on quote unquote opposite sides of the spectrum? I'm waiting. This is to the critique commenter. Please enlighten me. Enlighten me on my very strong, positive relationship with said sibling to this day that I understood since birth. That people gave these exact arguments about me versus them, me versus my sibling. And so, yeah, I just find that very, very interesting that it's like, these people don't even consider the fact that we already might have strong, close ties with those autistic beings that they're trying to say we are like pushing their voices out or whatever, or like dominating the conversation. It's like, no, like, go find those said people then if you want them to do a collaboration with us somehow, by all means. And if you're going to argue like they can't, they're nonverbal, and they like blah blah blah, and if you start saying things that start diminishing their intellect at that point, then it's like, well, first of all, like, if they already can't by your standards or definition, then like what's so wrong the fact that I can? Like, what's the saying? Empowered women empower other women, right? Does that make sense? Like, so for people out there who don't know that saying, it's basically like, there are a lot of women who have been disempowered. Basically, all women, essentially, systemically anyway. Now, when women rise up and empower themselves, self-empower, that empowers other women to do the same. In other words, those who feel like they don't have a voice, there are people representing them with said voice to do so. So, like, it should be clicking that the autistic people who have a lot of articulation to say, to put out there, not saying that other autistics don't, but like the specific people that people are complaining to, basically, who do have said voice, that have a lot of facts or a lot of opinions and a lot of articulation that you can actually understand, to the point where you almost want to say, okay, they're a high functioning autistic. This is different. This is like an unfair, like, they're the ones who don't understand. It's like, literally, we are exactly the ones who understand. Like, that's what we're trying to say. Like, that we're most definitely still autistic. Like, there's not like a workaround that. I don't know. I kind of feel bad almost, but it's just like, it is frustrating. I find it frustrating. But anyway, I like my personality. I like that I can kind of go off the handle and just be like, no, I'm just going to say I don't like that. And people, I guess, can say that to me back, but I'm just going to like say it louder, like, no. And they're like, I can too. Agree to disagree. No. Like, no, there's some things that like you literally like most likely should just grow as a person at this point. Like, we can do the reverse Uno and say we both have a right to like have a difference of view and opinion and action, like, but that last word should be a little key indicator as to why that's problematic. Like, people can take things really far. We need to stand up for certain rights and things and certain behaviors that are either harmful or not harmful. So I feel very strongly about this. I don't feel like the autistic community benefits from people trying to say the other side of this, of like trying to explain like, hey, there are autistics out there that are like in much like that are not getting a voice like you and all these other things. And it's like, first of all, this is my very first video on trying to create an autistic channel. I already have a tough time getting any sort of traction on social media. I get shadow banned quite frequently. Second of all, like, when you're going to talk about that, you should also be understanding like this applies intersectionally. And what I mean by that is like, if you are a woman, if you are trans, if you are, Asian or a person of color, these are all going to be factors. If you are disabled in any way, these are all factors that are going to give you less likelihood of receiving a spotlight or, about life itself, privileges and so forth. So it's just like, let us have a voice, let us have a platform. And like, if you have such a problem with it, go find a channel that has like a million zillion subscribers and that their whole content is that they're rich people that like buy out houses for fun and then demolish them or something. That's probably a channel out there, Like, that's actually not a stretch. That is very likely to be a real existing channel. Why not go to those channels then? Be like, this is kind of bad that the vast majority of views get directed onto these really mind-numbingly unimportant channels. I don't know, maybe that's harsh to call them all unimportant. Because, for example, I watched this person who made an umbrella out of water. It was really funny to me, the video. So, please understand that when I put out a harsh sounding perspective, that I don't necessarily wholeheartedly feel that way. It's a part of how I feel. I would call this an open mind. I feel like to a lot of autistic people and to a lot of Pisces in general, it's just really easy for us to have those types of views and opinions that are capable of being a contradiction to a different view or opinion that we also hold. Anyway, I didn't get too into it about my sibling. I also feel like there might be people that would disagree about my siblings' upbringing because I brought up that they're non-binary. So they're like, wow, they must be really intelligible and communicative and woke and stuff. So how come you said that they're like not? It's like, that's the thing. I never viewed it that way as a little small child because everyone around was actively viewing my sibling this way. I disagreed as a small little child too, also autistic, because me and my sibling got along all the time. In fact, like a lot of this like non-verbalness is like basically by choice. I'd be honest with you. Like those of you who disagree with me, it's like it's pretty much like a survival at that point because it's like it's first of all what a lot of them are conditioned into, and then second of all, it's like once it's like y'all do understand, like they do know what you're saying, right? Like no matter how much it looks like it doesn't, because like, oh, well, if they didn't like being objectified and talked down to like they're stupid, how come they don't say anything about it? It's like that's how much they put up with you. Like, I don't know. I'm not talking about the critique or the comment at this point. I'm talking about like certain like moms and stuff and like really harmful parents that definitely exist. So please don't feel attacked to anyone out there that it's like, I don't view them like that, but like we're kind of more on the fence about this subject, like the critique or comment. And that point, like, don't worry. Like, I'm not, not trying to view you that way. Just trying to express like, overall, that's where it all kind of stems from. If said extreme, really harmful, condescending people didn't do that and autistic people from birth were given like an actual world that was like pretty much worthy of us being around. We're all too good for this world, by the way. Just saying. Like quite literally. You all have to understand that. Like we all really deserve better than what this world is doing right now. It's quite a dark world. I'm gonna be honest with you. So if it was more ideal, a lot of these autistic people, first of all, could just stay nonverbal if they wanted to, and it would be fine. Also, a lot of them would probably have a space where they'd be down to talk with you and like learn certain things and communicate with you in a way that can bridge a gap. We should all also be learning sign language, but none of us are doing that. Um, and like that's not even just about the autistic community. That's quite literally about the deaf community, right? Um, so it's like there are other ways that the normative world should be learning about to bridge gaps with different types of people. It's not on the autistic people to have to fix that. Putting it on an autistic channel that we should be understanding something more about the other autistics. They try to backtrack. They try like later on they start putting quotes on like the low masking high needs because they're like, yeah, I get it, you're all the same. They basically like change their mind throughout a conversation on there, sorta, which is weird. But it's like in truth, you're kind of putting an upper and a lesser when you talk about it like that. And it's like, but they try masking it a little by saying it's more of like that they're more oppressed than you are. And it's like, they're oppressed differently. We shouldn't be trying to like compete on oppression, right? Like oppression's just like bad. um like there's a lot of oppression that's still going to take place for autistic people that are basically deemed like you should just be a person now. Like, look, you can use words and everything, and we can tell you do have emotional intelligence. So, you know, now that we have to acknowledge and admit that it was a stereotype and that we can't actually determine whether or not you're autistic based off of like emotional intellect or any level of intellect, we're just going to have to say, yeah, even though we know you're autistic, we're just going to call it low needs and not give you any of the support. And we're still going to expect you to work, do labor, and live, quote unquote, like everyone else. It's problematic, guys, because, like, I don't even know. I don't want to get into that. That's a topic for another video. This ended up being the same length as my last one, but hey, I coughed a lot less, and I feel like I touched up more on reacting to the Thought Spots video / critiques on the negative comments or comments that I view negative. I hope nobody took offense to the way I talked about all of this, and I hope that I go through with uploading this. I've made so many videos, and I haven't uploaded a single one, so hopefully I'll do it this time. If any of you made it all the way through this video, if you're an autistic person, or if you have questions, some of you might be like, I don't know if I'm autistic, or like you kind of like you do know, but like you don't feel validated because maybe you can't get a diagnosis from someone or you haven't gone to get a proper diagnosis. I want this to be a safe space for you. I want to like talk about that in a future video. So any comments or questions you all have about me or yourself or about autism, let me know. And yeah, I hope people see this and like this and feel some sense of value from this. And yeah, I hope to talk to you all some more in future content. So yeah, that's all. I'm gonna try to get this uploaded probably. All right. Wishing you all well, putting a lot of love out there. And yeah, I hope you all are all doing good. So yeah, have a good day.